Okay, show me your excited look. Are you excited? Give me an excited look. Yeah. Good. Now show me your excited moves. Like, okay, do it. Good. Show me your action moves. Like, got it? Good. Okay, sit down. Be calm. And I'm going to tell you about Peter. Peter was an action guy. He liked to give the answers, like, I know. He was a thinker and a quick thinker, like, I know. He liked to do the job. Let me do it. That was Peter. Peter was a fisherman. Peter was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. How did Peter get to be one of the disciples? How did Jesus choose Peter? We know that when Jesus came to earth, that he had always been God the Son. When he came to earth, he had some very important things to do for us. And he lived here on earth as a human, as a man. And he prayed to God the Father lots while he was here. He prayed before doing things. He prayed before making decisions. So the night before Jesus started inviting men to be his disciples, he spent a long time praying to God the Father. And after he finished praying, he knew who to choose. Now, Peter wasn't always called Peter. While he was fishing on the lake, that was his job, he was called Simon. Later, he would get to be called Peter. So that's where Jesus saw Andrew, who was Simon's brother. That's where Jesus saw Andrew and Simon fishing on the lake. And the Bible tells us that Jesus asked Simon and Andrew to be his disciples, to follow him. The Bible says that they did. So Jesus was on the shore, and there was a crowd of people that he was talking to, but they were starting to crowd in on him a lot, like squashing him. Okay, make yourself all squashed in a crowd, like, crowding me and crushing me. So Jesus asked Andrew and Simon if he could get in their boat so the crowd wouldn't be crushing him. And I said yes. So he got in the boat. And after Jesus finished talking to the crowd from the boat, he told them, let's go out fishing. Simon said to him, well, we've been fishing all night. We didn't catch any fish. Fishermen used to fish all night in those days. And Jesus said, okay, cast your net on the other side of the boat. And so the Bible says they did. They probably thought, really, we're the fishermen. We know how to do it, but we'll honor you. So they cast their net on the other side. And what happened was, they got so many fish, they couldn't even pull the net back into the boat. The net started to break and rip because there were so many fish crowded into that boat. Well, Simon, who was later going to be, knew just what to do. he fell down right in front of Jesus and he said, "Oh, go away from me. I am too sinful." Simon knew, he recognized that there was something about Jesus that was so good, so powerful, so holy, and it made Simon ashamed. Jesus told Simon that he would be called Peter. That's how Simon's name changed. So, does anybody have an idea or a guess of what the name Peter means? Yes, some of you are saying rock. That's it. The name Peter means rock. That's the name that Jesus gave him, Peter, a rock. My rock kind of got some stuff on my Bible here. Well, Jesus asked Peter and Andrew to go with him to be disciples. Jesus said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." What do you think Andrew and Peter had been fishing for all these years? Fish. They were fishers of fish. So when Jesus said, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men," Peter said, "Okay." Remember, Peter liked to answer first. He was kind of an action guy. Well, Peter and Andrew just left their boats and went and followed Jesus. And 10 other men, as you know, joined that group of disciples. And all of those 12 disciples got to hear a lot of wonderful things and see a lot of wonderful things, a lot of action. I think Peter loved it. Peter got to watch Jesus with a 12-year-old girl take her from being dead to being alive again. Now, Jesus only took a couple of people with him into the room when he did that for that 12-year-old girl. I think that Jesus thought, Peter's going to love this. And I think Peter did. Oh, Peter watched Jesus stop a storm from storming just by Jesus saying to the wind and the waves, "Shh, be quiet, stop." Oh, Peter liked that. And Peter saw Jesus walking on the water and the lake, stormy water on the lake. Jesus walked on it. He was headed out walking towards the boat where Peter and the other disciples were in the storm in the boat. And when Peter saw Jesus walking on the water, he thought, "Hey, I want to do that." And so he called to Jesus, "Have me come out and walk on the water to you." And he did. Jesus said, "Come on." Peter just got right out of the boat and walked on the water. You think that was a good idea? Yeah? Well, for a while. Except that pretty soon Peter got scared and then he started to sink into the stormy water and Jesus had to rescue him. Oops. One day, Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" The disciples said, "People say different things. They don't really know." And then Jesus said, "Who do you say that I am, you disciples?" Well, of course, Peter answered first, and he said, "You are the Christ, Son of the living God." And Jesus said, "Good answer." But some of Peter's answers were not so good. Like when Jesus took Peter and James and John up to the top of a high mountain and leaving the other disciples down at the bottom. When they got up there, Jesus showed more of his godliness than of his manliness. He started to be really bright, shiny, with white, shiny hair. And Moses and Elijah, two men who lived during the Old Testament times, but who had been dead for a long time, just suddenly appeared right there with Jesus, talking with Jesus. So Peter, of course, he had to say something or do something. He was an action guy. So he said, "This is good. Let's build 3 little houses, one for you, Jesus, and one for Moses and one for Elijah." Well, right as soon as Peter said that, a cloud came down and covered Peter and the other 2 disciples. And the voice of God said, "This is my son. Listen to him." Oh, Peter, that was not the time to be talking. That was the time to be listening. One day, Jesus told the disciples that he was soon going to be killed. And Peter said, no, that's not ever going to happen to you, no. And Jesus said, "Peter, just get behind me. You are not thinking about God's plan." Later still, Jesus told the disciples that when he was arrested, they would all run away. Peter, of course, right away said, "Well, yeah, the rest of them might run away, but not me. I would never do that." That didn't turn out well for Peter either. We know that Jesus was arrested. When the soldiers first arrived in the Garden of Gethsemane to arrest Jesus, guess who pulled out a sword and started to try to fight the soldiers? Of course, it was Peter. And he just did a wild slash and he cut off one of the soldiers' ears. Well, Jesus picked up the ear and fixed it. He put it right back on the soldier. It was just as good as new. And he said to Peter, "Don't do that. This is part of God's plan. We're going to let it happen." We know that all the disciples did run away, including Peter. When Jesus had been telling the disciples about how they were going to run away and desert him, he told Peter, "And you will deny me 3 times. Later, while Jesus was being taken from one official to another and they were trying to accuse him and declare him guilty, 3 different people at 3 different times during that night came up to Peter and said, "Oh, you are one of them who are with Jesus." And 1, 2, 3 times Peter said, "No, no, no." Oh, and then Jesus was being crucified, but Peter wasn't there. He was hiding somewhere. He was ashamed. When Jesus rose again from the dead, Peter did hear that Jesus rose from the dead. And right away, he just ran until he got to the tomb, and he looked in there, and he got to see that the tomb was empty. Oh, Jesus wasn't there. Peter and all the other disciples kept on hiding in a room because they were afraid of the soldiers coming to arrest them. But 2 different times, Jesus appeared to the disciples in that room, so they knew that Jesus was alive again. And Jesus told them to wait for the gift of the power from God the Father. Peter hated waiting, so he waited for a little bit, and then he said, "I'm going fishing." Some of the other disciples said, "Oh, okay, we'll go too." Well, they went and they got their boats and they went out into the deep water in the Sea of Galilee. They fished all night. What they caught was nothing. So in the morning, they started rowing back. It was starting to be daylight, so they were starting to row back to the shore. There was a man over on the shore, and he shouted, "Did you catch any fish?" And they shouted back to him, "No, not even one." He shouted out, "Cast your net on the other side of the boat." So the Bible says that they did. They cast their net onto the other side of the boat. And immediately, fish just started coming from everywhere into the net, so many fish that the disciples couldn't get the nets pulled back into the boat. One of the disciples said, "Oh, the man on the shore, it's the Lord." Peter said, "What? It is?" He knew just what to do. He just jumped in the water and he started swimming to swim to the shore. He didn't want to wait for that boat. It was too slow because it was dragging all those fish that were in that net. He got to the shore, and then the other disciples got to the shore with their boat dragging that heavy net crammed with fish. And they saw that Jesus was already there and had a fire burning, and he was cooking some fish and some bread. And Jesus said to them, "Come, eat with me." While Peter was eating the meal, I don't know what he was thinking, but maybe he was feeling a little bit ashamed for the things that he had done, hiding and denying Jesus like 3 times. After the meal, Jesus said privately to Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, you know I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." And then Jesus said, "Peter, do you love me?" Peter said, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." And the 3rd time, 3 times Jesus asked him this, just like the 3 times that Peter denied Jesus. Now Jesus was asking him 3 times, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Oh, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." And then just like when Jesus had called Peter to be a disciple 3 years earlier, he said to Peter, "Follow me." Peter would go on to have many more adventures. We will probably learn about those another time. They sound like they had something to do with sheep. Or did they? Well, I remember Jesus saying that people that he saw were just like lost sheep without a shepherd. Remember that? Do you think that is what Jesus was telling Peter about? Maybe you think it was a mystery for Peter to think about and later to find out about? Maybe Peter would have lots of things to say later. Maybe Peter would have lots of things to do later. For the people that Jesus had said were like lost sheep who needed a shepherd. Oh, wouldn't Peter just love to do that?